Welcome back to another edition of The Explainer. Have you ever looked at a massive new highway being built? Or maybe you saw a shift in your national tax policy, and you tried to trace the economic ripples? Well, today we are opening up what I like to call the societal wallet to decode the seriously high-stakes world of public finance. It's the hidden engine driving macroeconomic stability. It impacts literally everything, from how basic resources are allocated right up to global market confidence. So this isn't just about balancing some giant spreadsheet. It is about understanding the actual levers that scale economies and shape the future of our modern society. Okay, let's look at our roadmap for today's explainer. We've got 6 key areas. 1. Defining public finance. 2. The 4 financial pillars. 3. Allocating our shared resources. 4. Bridging the wealth gap. 5. Stabilizing through the storms. And 6. Powering future economic growth. Let's get right into it. Starting with the big picture, here is Section 1, Defining Public Finance and How It Bridges Economics and Politics. The famous economist Hugh Dalton hit the nail on the head when he said, public finance is one of those subjects which lie on the borderline between economics and politics. And that makes perfect sense, because at the end of the day, balancing a nation's income and its spending isn't just a sterile math problem. It's a very real reflection of societal priorities. It is where the cold, hard numbers of economic theory completely collide with the human element of policymaking. Think about it. Mathematically, aggressively raising taxes might perfectly balance a budget deficit on paper. But politically, that same move might lose an administration their next election. It's a constant tightrope walk. So borrowing from the foundational insights of experts like Philip Taylor and Ursula Hicks, we can basically distill it down to this. Public finance is the field of economics focused on how the government brings money in, how it spends it out, and how it manages that whole procedural loop. But here is the absolutely crucial part. It's all to satisfy collective wants. A government, ideally anyway, isn't operating for a profit like a corporation. It's securing funds to provide necessities that the private free market just won't, or mathematically can't supply efficiently. All right, moving from the abstract theory to the concrete machinery, let's hit Section 2, the 4 financial pillars. This is the actual anatomy of that societal wallet. At the center of it all is the massive administrative machinery. Think of this as the control room. Public money has to be managed exceptionally well, which requires a highly organized framework. We're talking rigorous budgeting processes, coordinating incredibly complex networks across different departments, and, this is key, deploying a massive auditing infrastructure. That level of scrutiny is essential. It ensures public capital is deployed effectively, minimizes waste, and makes sure the funds pulled out of the economy are actually serving the purposes they were collected for in the first place. Now, within that control room, 4 distinct pillars support the whole system. First, you have public revenue. This is how the government gets its income, mainly through taxes, but also fees, fines, and state-owned enterprises. Second is public expenditure. That's the spending side, and it creates massive economic ripples across industries. Third is public debt. Because, let's face it, when spending outpaces revenue, governments have to borrow, which creates a really complex, often intergenerational economic burden. And fourth is financial administration. This is the ongoing, meticulous oversight required to balance those first 3 pillars and keep the whole system fiscally healthy. Now, what's really interesting about public revenue is that the primary focus is undoubtedly taxation. But economists don't just look at the top-line number of how much money is coming in. Oh no, they rigorously study the actual incidence of those taxes, meaning who ultimately bears the real financial burden. For example, a tax slapped on a corporation might actually just be paid by you and me, the consumers, through higher prices. Plus, it's about analyzing how those taxes change consumer behavior, labor forces, and corporate investment strategies. And on the flip side, once that revenue is collected, or that sovereign debt is issued, how exactly is it used? The study of public expenditure categorizes where these massive chunks of capital go. It analyzes why government spending almost always trends upward as societies get more complex. Meanwhile, public debt analysis looks at the long-term hangover of that borrowing, weighing the future cost of debt service against the immediate benefits of injecting cash today. Every single dollar spent or borrowed sends a direct shockwave through the economy, shifting resources and totally altering market dynamics. Okay, so now that we know what the system is made of, let's look at what it actually does. Section 3, allocating our shared resources. This is the first core function we'll cover. The allocation function is all about building the baseline foundation of a society. The state absolutely has to intervene to provide what economists call public goods. Why? Because of something called the free rider problem. Basically, private markets won't supply these things because they aren't profitable if people can't be excluded from using them. We're talking about the absolute necessities: maintaining law and order, national defense, massive interstate highways, and basic public utilities like water supply and streetlights. These are the non-negotiable requirements for a complex society to even function. And that leads us right into Section 4, bridging the wealth gap, also known as the distribution function. The core goal here is to mitigate extreme inequalities in income and wealth. If left entirely alone, a pure market economy can naturally create some pretty severe wealth disparities. So public finance addresses this through deliberate fiscal transfers. The government imposes progressive taxes on higher earners or luxury goods, and then reallocates that money to subsidize essential services, healthcare, or direct aid for lower income groups. It sounds a bit like a macroeconomic Robin Hood, but really it's just a highly standard fiscal mechanism. It's designed to stabilize society, keep consumer demand healthy across all income brackets, and prevent the kind of extreme living standard disparities that can spark systemic unrest. Next up is Section 5, stabilizing through the storms. This is the stabilization function, a concept that became incredibly vital during the financial crises of the 1930s. Full employment and stable prices? Yeah, they don't just happen by magic. Economies naturally go through wild cyclical swings. During a severe depression or recession, private businesses stop investing and consumers stop spending. So, following the famous framework from J.M. Keynes, the government steps in. They literally pump funds into the economy, purposely running deficits to artificially stimulate demand. But during an economic boom, when things run too hot and inflation spikes, the government pulls the exact opposite lever. They reduce spending, hike taxes, and run a surplus to cool it all down. This constant counter-cyclical balancing act is the absolute essence of functional finance. Our final stop today is Section 6, powering future economic growth. Because public finance isn't just about managing today, it's about building for tomorrow. Especially in emerging and rapidly developing economies, the ultimate endgame of all this fiscal maneuvering is robust, sustainable growth. Public expenditure is used as a strategic catalyst. We're talking modernization in agriculture, industrial innovation, and next-gen tech infrastructure. This kind of development-oriented spending isn't just a quick band-aid to keep the lights on. It is a highly calculated investment. By laying down this foundation today, improving transport, education, health, governments are essentially engineering a higher compounding rate for private sector productivity and long-term expansion. It's a real game changer. So what does this all mean? We've fully decoded the societal wallet. We've seen how revenue is strategically extracted, how capital is deployed, and how those countercyclical levers are pulled to stabilize volatile markets and drive compounding growth. It's this massive, incredibly complex machine that silently dictates the economic reality of our daily lives. So I want to leave you with this final thought. The next time you see a massive infrastructure project break ground in your city, or you notice a shift in your local taxes, ask yourself, which function of public finance is at work today? Is it allocation, distribution, stabilization, or growth? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep looking for the why behind the world around you.